Hello, and welcome to our Social Connection in the Time of COVID-19 webinar series hosted by Mentor. I am Desiree Robertson, Director of Training and Product Design here at Mentor National. Today we'll be discussing creative ways that national and local mentoring programs have found to meet the various needs of young people, their families, and mentors during this challenging time. We hope on this call to balance sharing resources with creating a communal environment for sharing and connecting with one another. On the page here is just a snapshot of the many organizations joining us today. We'd like to welcome you, our partners from diverse mentoring programs, schools, and youth development organizations from across the country. Many of you join Mentor for our quarterly national organizational calls, which we hold to provide updates on ways to engage and collaborate as a part of the mentoring movement. This discussion series is an extension of those quarterly calls, and we've wanted to include many local programs in this discussion as those of you are working to respond to this pandemic every day. Please use the question and answer box to introduce your name, where you are in the country, and your organization. We also hope that you will share your go-to self-care activity. We recognize that as we work hard to support others in our lives, we need to focus on supporting and caring for ourselves. How are you doing that these days? This is going to be our actual agenda today. We're going to have a welcome, our housekeeping, introductions, our panel discussion, question and answer, and then the wonderful open sharing time where you will share your thoughts in the questions tab. And then we'll talk a little bit more about our next steps and our resources. So just a few reminders about the call today and how to best participate. Everyone has been muted to protect the sound quality of the webinar. However, we want and encourage you to participate. This call is for you. So we want you to share resources, ideas, concerns, and questions in the question and answer box with your peers throughout the webinar. If you haven't already, again, introduce yourself in the box with your name, organization, where you're located in the country, and your go-to self-care activity during this crazy time. There again will also be time for discussion and question and answer after our panelists speak. Please type in your questions or comments in the questions box in the control panel to your right to share your ideas, questions, challenges, resources, and approaches. Then we will share them out as time permits with using your first name only. A reminder that today's call will be recorded, so your responses may show up in that recording. The recording will also be available to those who registered and were unable to attend and will be sent in a follow-up email in about a week from now. Now I turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Dudney Siller, for our welcome.
Thank you so much, Desiree, and thank you everybody for joining us in today's call. We appreciate you taking the time to be a part of this webinar series and the webinar we're hosting here today. At Mentor National, over the past month or so, we've been doing these webinars and putting surveys out into the field to learn a little bit more about what programs are going through and families and communities are going through at this time, so that we can continue to leverage our website and our resources to support and also learn from our colleagues like yourselves, in our response as a community to these times. And two of the major topics that came up in the survey results is this need around instrumental supports, as well as navigating mental, emotional, physical health, at this time. And so what we wanted to do today is to really help facilitate a conversation and a dialogue. And we're really, really excited about the esteemed colleagues that we have to support us today and sharing their experiences. And, we've gotten, feedback about, shifting roles during this time, access to computers and Wi-Fi, the emotional needs of young people and their families, how programs are reacting to being in this first responder kind of role when it comes to social connection, acknowledging system inequities. So there's a wide variety of topics that are under the umbrella of these two themes. And so what we wanted to do was to really host a conversation and a dialogue today. So we really hope that you utilize the question box, to participate. And we'll continue to sort of answer as many questions as we can from what we've seen, and as well as continue to update our website, which you'll see at the end of today's webinar, on where we'll continue to update resources that we have related to mental and emotional health, as well as these other kinds of supports. And so what I want to do is start off by introducing our three panelists. Today we have Kendall Miller, who is a 2019-2020 Youth Advocate for Mentoring at Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership. As a youth advocate for mentoring, she participates in virtual advocacy and policy trainings and is preparing a policy memo for Congress on how federal legislation can support children of addicts. As a student board member of the organization Covington Partners, she helps make important decisions regarding her local mentoring program and various after-school programs throughout her community. At school, she is involved in many different leadership positions, including being the drum major of the marching band, captain of the academic team, and a member of the National Honor Society. Kendall is an uprising senior, currently residing in Covington, Kentucky. And with her passion for education, she strives for any opportunity to learn something new to potentially help others in her community. And we're really excited to have her participate in the conversation today, and as an amazing example of how young people are part of the answer and the response to these issues as well. We also have Trisha Howell, who will be joining us. Trisha joined C4K as the mentor coordinator in 2015 after years of outreach and community service in both Haiti, where my family's from, and Guatemala. Trisha utilizes her diverse professional experiences, including service as a former elementary school teacher, to help build the relationships, skills, and knowledge necessary to achieve personal confidence and career choice. Trisha holds a BA in elementary education from Flagler College. And then we also have Aaron, who will be joining us today. Aaron is a program associate at the U.S. Soccer Foundation, where his primary responsibility is managing and supporting the 17 OJJDP sub-grantee sites that are currently operating Soccer for Success, a 12-week evidence-based curriculum that integrates healthy living, nutrition education, safe spaces, community engagement, and most importantly, mentorship. Sports-based youth development is a lifelong passion for Aaron, having spent time in Haiti, Malawi, and South Africa, working for grassroots soccer prior to joining the foundation. And so with three panelists joining us, we're gonna have a conversation about what they've seen in the field, how they've tried to respond to these various needs, and we'll continue to have a dialogue after they're done presenting as well, where you can add questions to the questions box and also share with us, what you've seen and what you've tried as well in your communities. So thank you all very much again for joining, and I will start by kicking it over to Kendall for her presentation.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Kendall Miller, and I'm here to really talk about how children are feeling during this time, and exactly how my local mentoring program is really trying to combat the issues that come with suddenly being thrown into this crazy different situation. So as Dudney said, I am a member of Covington Partners, and we are kind of a local organization, and we run the local mentoring program as well as after school programs, pretty much every after school program in the Covington area. So we do a lot, and so we are really kind of the front runners of this. We're really out on the field trying to help as much as we can. So one of the things we've seen a lot kids are not feeling good, really. They're really not. The transition from, we thought we were just going to be out of school for 2 or so weeks, and then it turned into the rest of the school year. It was a very sudden transition, and it was not one that was well taken. And with that comes the need for, we call it NTI schoolwork. So NTI stands for non-traditional instruction, where we have been forced to do work at home, basically. And that transition was not a good one either, because you have to think about how these kids really they've never done really online schooling before. And not a lot of them realize that they didn't really learn well in a non-classroom environment, and this led to a lot of people being upset, obviously, because a lot of these kids prided themselves on their schoolwork. They prided themselves on coming to school every day, seeing their teachers every day, learning every day, and then all of a sudden that's taken away. And so another thing in my area, because really impoverished areas have took a huge hit, really. One of the biggest hits, really, with unemployment rates have gone even lower. That means even less income coming in. And this has left a lot of families in my area struggling for basic food, necessities, toiletries, stuff like that. And my area has definitely taken a really large hit. So what my organization, Covington Partners, have done, they've really done such a good job at addressing this head on. And so we've done a lot to really address these issues. So the first thing they did for the mentoring program was they set guidelines on how mentors and mentees can talk safely and efficiently, because we know that these kids, they need someone right now, like they really do. And the truth is, a lot of them don't come from good home environments, so their mentors are really some of the people, some of the only people that are really there for them sometimes. So Covington Partners has set guidelines for communication between mentor and mentees. So for example, high school students and middle school students, we have been blessed with the opportunity to be able to take technology home with us. So we all have laptops that we can use. So mentors and mentees have been emailing back and forth. They've been FaceTiming. They have been texting. We're always trying to encourage them to just continue that communication, whether at least once a week. Just let your mentee know that you're there for them and you care about them, because in these times it can really just be very scary. So the issue, though, comes with, of course, elementary students who weren't sent home with any technology, and a lot of the times they don't have phones or anything to communicate. So one thing that we've done to help keep our elementary matches still communicating with their mentors is if we've allowed mentors to actually write letters to their matches. So what they do is, like, they send it to the coordinator, the mentor drops the letter off, or they send it to the coordinator at the elementary school, the mentoring coordinator at the elementary school. And what that mentoring coordinator does is they send that letter back to the mentee. This helps maintain, like, privacy as well if the mentor doesn't already know the student's home address. And this also helps the mentees know that their mentor is still thinking about them, especially in a time where it can feel like maybe nobody is thinking about them. And another program, a really cool program that we've been doing, is Operation MVP. And in this program, what we do is, well, a mentee or a mentee's family, they can sign up to be put on this list. And basically Covington Partners staff, so this is just the staff as a whole, they actually deliver food and toiletries and necessities directly to the mentees' houses, which is a super cool thing. It's really amazing. We have gotten so many donations, and we've been able to provide so many kids with so much food, so much, just basic stuff like soap, deodorant, toilet paper, stuff like that. And that's also been a way to kind of keep tabs on kids, really. So when we do like these home visits or whatever, that's another way we can ensure the children's mental health, that they're doing okay. You could be like, hey, how are you doing? How have things been lately? That person-to-person contact is really essential sometimes. And so kind of trying to combat that with a pandemic has definitely been a challenge. So that's a way how we've done that. Another thing, another role that mentors are playing is that they're encouraged to actually help students with their NTI work. Because like I said, that transition has been extremely rocky, and regardless, students still need to get their work done. Especially students who are in AP, IB classes, because me personally, I'm a full IB student, International Baccalaureate, and that has been definitely a struggle for me, transitioning all of a sudden to, teaching myself basically everything at home. That's really been a huge challenge. So my mentor has been critical in helping me stay on track, make sure I'm confident in my work. And that's another huge thing with, not being able to really do your work as well as you could before, is the confidence. And that's another kind of mental health downer. So mentors are really helping to, keep that going, keep that workflow going, which we really appreciate. And our own mentors, we have sent, Covington Partners as an organization has sent out letters, have sent out memos to kind of educate mentors on how our students may be affected during this time, because like I said, members in impoverished communities like my own, low-income communities, have definitely taken a really big hit, and it's definitely been kind of scary. So Covington Partners has really made sure to always, keep in contact with students, let them know what's going on, always make sure they're okay in whatever way they can, whether it be emailing, texting, in-person visits while giving them food, so that's really how we've been tackling it. And there has been its hardships. Sometimes it's hard to keep in contact with students who aren't so used to using their email or technology. Sometimes it is kind of hard to kind of maintain that relationship, but we have been blessed with so many good mentees and mentors. We have around, I think, 202 mentor-mentee matches all together throughout the elementary school, middle school, and high school. So yeah, we've really been doing I think we've really been doing a great job just keeping in contact with everybody, and I think that is a really integral part in times such as unpredictable and scary as these. So yeah. But so I think I got a question. It says, what does MVP stand for? In context of Covington Partners, I am not entirely sure. In the flyers, it just says Operation MVP. Maybe that's me not paying attention, but not entirely sure what it stands for. I'm sorry that I couldn't answer that. But it is a really cool program nonetheless. Like I said, our staff delivers food to mentees. So I'm sorry I couldn't answer that, but yeah, but that's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Kendall, for that. We appreciate the presentation. And thank you, everybody, for submitting all of your self-care practices. I'm seeing a lot of gardening and music. That's really important. So much research talks about the importance of regulation. And during this time, those self-care practices is really key. So shout out to you all. I'll toss it over now to Trisha for her presentation. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Hope I'm being heard here. Yeah, I just want to say thanks so much to Mentor for hosting this workshop. It's genuinely an honor to be part of it. I have been on the other side of these workshops for a few years now as a mentor coordinator. As was mentioned in the introduction, Tricia Howell, I'm the mentor coordinator for a program called Computers for Kids in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I am excited to share a little bit about what we've been doing in terms of helping to provide some care and support to our youth and their families, and also our mentors in this time. So grateful for that opportunity. And I think it sort of boils down to a few points for us. One point I'd like to highlight in terms of a best practice that we found is really relying on partnerships. And so Mentor, for example, has been fantastic putting together these webinars. And I mean, shortly after stay-at-home orders went into place, the e-mentoring supplement was being shared pretty widely. And we were able to grab that pretty quickly and start to establish some framework for ourselves and our programming to be able to start getting our mentoring program and connection with our youth and mentors going again. So thanks so much to Mentor for the resources that they provide. Also, our local Mentor affiliate, Mentor Virginia, has been a really incredible help to us as well, as far as putting on, town halls, establishing really quickly some statewide collaboration for us. So we've been able to bounce ideas off of each other here within our state, also providing that technical assistance. For our program, I'm sure all of us, those of you here on the call, are really thinking about, not just how this is impacting us right now, but we also want to be thinking down the road. And so we're looking at how the framework that we're putting in place currently is going to perhaps be useful to us moving forward. And so, for our program, and I'm certain for many of yours as well, transportation does tend to be one of the biggest barriers for youth being able to participate in programs like ours and to connect with mentors. And so we want to see this as an opportunity to potentially grow programming down the road. And Mentor Virginia has been fantastic at helping us kind of work through those questions that we have. In terms of, aligning ourselves with best practices. And then I also would like to give a shout out to our friends at the Clubhouse Network. We are part of something called Project Impacts, and it's a youth mentoring grant that's funded by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. And it has really given us an opportunity to collaborate with partners from all over the US to look at mentoring in our space, and especially, now within the context of a global pandemic, being able to share ideas and resources with that group has been an incredible resource for us. So, I make those notes not only to give some shout outs to those organizations who've been extremely supportive to us, but also to say that one of our points is, of course, relying on each other and program resources that are out there that we can't provide. So one of the ways that we've been able to support our families is to really be a bit of a hub for other resources. I mean, we are a STEAM mentoring program, and that's what we do. We are not a food program, we're not a mental health and counseling program, but there are programs that exist here in our community. And so we want to be able to try to connect our families as much as we can with those. And so we've relied a lot on our trust that we've built up with our families over time to be able to say, how are you doing? What do you need? And then they've been able to kind of relay that back to us so that we can connect them with other resources. And so, collaboration, obviously, name of the game. We're all here because of that. We see the value in it. And then, connections, engagement. Some of you have shared here in the comments around your way that you are caring for yourselves. And one of the things that we're seeing for our young people, our youth, is that, engaging in creative pursuits is a great way to feel cared for and to kind of deal with the stress of this time. And so we've really worked hard to reconnect with everyone. And so Kendall touched on some of those, being really creative around how we can connect. And Being persistent too, I think, has been one key for us in terms of making those reconnections. You know, I have been genuinely surprised at how many people are actually picking up their phones these days. There was a time where I could only get in touch with someone through a text, and you know, people are picking up the phone all the time, and it's been really, really encouraging. And I think it's because people want connections, and they're looking for support. And so I've had a lot of success with just phone calls, which again, surprising. But you know, it could be everything from I might try someone's phone, it's off this week, but I'll try back next week and, you know, finally get someone. So, you know, being persistent, and then thinking about different ways. You know, we've had to really move outside of our typical norm. And so we, you know, have used all sorts of methods for connecting, everything from connecting through social media, emails, newsletters, again, phone calls, text messages, you know, knocking on on doors if we need to, that kind of thing, just to, you know, then from a distance say, hey, we're here. And so, you know, and we are encouraging our youth to participate back, you know, to be engaged with us. And we're doing that by offering various ways for them to be involved and engaging again. So, you know, through workshops, open-ended hangouts, one-to-one mentoring. Our program participates, or provides rather, not only one-to-one mentor matches, but also a group mentoring space. And so one of the things that we really worked on immediately following stay-at-home orders going into place here in Charlottesville was to reconnect our pairs, and we've seen a lot of success with that. And that kind of leads me to another point around engaging our mentors again. We, of course, with the help of, like, you know, e-mentoring supplements and things like that, put together a training for our mentors to get them reconnected in a way that was as safe and seamless as possible. There have certainly been hiccups, and we've had lots of opportunities for learning through this process, but we feel like we've got a pretty good framework in place for connecting our youth and their mentors again. And we're seeing a lot of great response from our mentors, especially. This is, you know, for thinking about ways that we can care for ourselves, you know, being able to support our community is certainly one way that people who are drawn to be mentors, especially mentors for youth, you know, being able to feel like you're supporting your community, again, is certainly a way that we can sort of deal with the stress of this time. And so we've had some great response from our mentors in that way. And so reconnecting them, and then as far as the, you know, training with our mentors, you know, some things that we've learned over the last several weeks is that, you know, we have to ask specific questions. And so if we want to provide support for our young people, we have to, you know, remember they're teens and preteens, and so they're not necessarily going to, you know, offer up, you know, responses to everything that might be going on. So asking specific questions, you know, with the way we learned that was really important. I have a specific example. You know, one of our mentoring pairs were connecting over a video chat, and the mentor said, well, how's it going? And the young person said, oh yeah, it's fine. And off camera, mom says, no, ask her about the algebra. And so, of course, you know, they had an opportunity to sort of work through some algebra work that the youth was working on and needed some support in, but she, you know, didn't ask. And so we've had to really think about, you know, encouraging our mentors to really step back and listen, and to hear things that, to pay attention to what the young people are saying, but also to ask specific questions around, you know, in terms of academic support, like, what are you working on? And can you show me your work? Can you share with me the things that you've been doing? So, you know, we are trying to be as creative as possible. And again, we're all kind of creating these new norms here. And so, you know, we're just outside the box, if you will, on our thinking in terms of how we can engage and what might be next. And another key point I'd like to make is that we've made sure to tell our mentors that there's a range of ways that people are experiencing this pandemic. And you know, it could be everything from, this is really frustrating to me that I can't be with my friends and or, you know, interact with the world. I'm not seeing my family. I've had to have my birthday party by myself. And, you know, a lot of those things feel really frustrating and really, you know, can be emotionally taxing to young people. But then on the other end of the spectrum, there's some very severe trauma that young people are experiencing, you know, parents with lost jobs. Where do I, you know, will we be evicted from our house? And so we are trying to remain as flexible as possible, especially in terms of our expectations for what and how people want to and can engage. And so, you know, kind of entering into all of this with a no pressure kind of expectation that we're here just to support each other, and that we anticipate that there's going to be a range of how people want to engage. I think I saw a question pop up on my screen here, and one of them, it was about platforms that we're using. We use Google had been using Google for our internal work on the program side of things, and our local school systems also use Google. So it just seemed to be a really, you know, an obvious platform for us to use. Everyone, for the most part, has access to it. And so we use Meet for Hangouts. We use Google Calendars to schedule sessions and workshops, and we just share out meeting codes whenever we have people coming together to meet up. So yeah, I'm looking forward to any questions you might have. I know that we definitely intend this to be more of a conversation, and I'm excited not only to share what we've been doing, but also to hear from you all as in your parts of the world, what's working for you and how you're caring for your community as well.
One other question we had on here, Tricia, is does your team oversee the calls between matches, or do you have any safety protocols that you have in place for those communications?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that was the biggest, you know, considerations for us when it came to reconnecting our pairs directly. Yeah, I am part of the Hangouts to start. So once the pair gets connected, I'm there to say hello, make sure everybody's on the line. For the most part, I mean, a lot of our members are living in close quarters with their family, and everyone is all around. And so we tell our mentors, not only will you have a call with your partner, but with their brothers and sisters as well. So everyone's kind of around. So, you know, we can't, certainly can't control everything. And we also want to make sure that pairs have some autonomy and they're, you know, feel relaxed enough to be able to talk. So what we have is a meetup where I can click in and join it at any moment. But I don't typically stay on for the entire call. And then our other meetups are, of course, group meetups that include staff and mentors as part of it. With all of this, we've asked families to be part of this process as well. So in terms of, you know, sharing out agreements and things like that, codes of conduct, we work to put that all in place as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tricia. Appreciate the time. We will now toss it over to Aaron.
Thanks, Bethany. Really appreciate the opportunity to be with you here all, you know, today, and hear from Tricia and Kendall. Just want to say a huge thank you to Mentor National for this webinar series. I've been fortunate enough to join the first two, and I've learned so much from hearing about some of the challenges and some of the, you know, strategies and solutions that this community is coming up with to hopefully support our mentees as much as possible. So I really just want to give you all a huge thank you. You know, and as Kendall was mentioning, a lot of our young people are suffering right now. And so what we are really trying to do is find ways to create engagement, you know, foster connectivity, as Tricia was saying. And, you know, one of the things that we're recognizing is now more than ever, mentors are incredibly important and valuable for our young people, because really, you know, as Kendall was mentioning, our young people are suffering. And so the mentors, the coach mentors in our program are going to be those that help the mentees see the light and, start feeling some positivity and start feeling like they can overcome some of this overwhelming situation. So one of the things that we've been working on at the U.S. Soccer Foundation is this new initiative called Soccer for Success at Home, which is essentially adapted from that 12-week evidence-based curriculum that Dudley introduced at the beginning of the webinar. So essentially, we're putting out, YouTube videos in English and Spanish each week that are based on our curriculum. They're kind of challenges, but also kind of hopefully giving our kids the ability to work on some skills during this time of confinement. We're also working on creating flyers with some of our coach mentors and distributing those flyers. The flyers touch on ranges like emotional health, self-care, and other strategies to really just stay active and sane. We're also really trying to foster as much connectivity as possible, as Trisha was really mentioning. So we've been implementing, partner webinars twice a month. And really these webinars have been such an amazing opportunities for our partners to kind of just get together in a safe space and talk about some of the challenges, some of the strategies that they're working on to overcome all of these new realities that are being presented by COVID. And so these webinars have just been critical. Just keep up the conversation, keep up the connectivity, and talk about the challenges that I keep saying, because I think in talking about these challenges, that's how we're going to find the solutions. And so we're really trying to do that as much as possible. We also have a resource called the Coach Mentor Minute that we used to do once a month. And they, really talk about a wide range of issues connected to our program. So social, emotional health, mental health, staying active, all these really important things that we want our mentees and coach mentors to think about. We've started to do those twice a month, right? So we're trying to find ways to increase connectivity, foster as much community as possible during this time. And then, I wanted to talk quickly about the response at our partner sites as well. And so like us, a lot of them are transitioning to virtual programming. And so they're kind of facing a lot of, access issues when it comes to that. I put that as a challenge to accessing virtual resources. So we're learning that some of our mentees maybe don't have access to the internet, maybe don't have access to a phone or a computer. If we're putting our resources out on YouTube or Facebook, we're learning that some school districts are blocking those social media channels. And so really, collectively trying to work through those issues and trying to find ways to create as much access as possible. The really amazing thing that some of our partners have transitioned to is this food access, this critical topic at the moment. Almost all of our partners were born with a kind of sports-based youth development mission in mind. And so, the topic of food access is something they never would have thought of, participating in maybe a few months ago. And now, because everything is just flipped on its head and the weekly, job losses, benefit losses, the new realities in terms of food insecurity, a lot of our partners are having to just step up and respond to this new need. And so we have some partners who, are serving 500 meals a day. And 4 months ago, they were serving 0. So it's really incredible to hear from them and hear what are the solutions, the critical items that they're working on just to help our mentees and our participants get through the next day and the next few weeks as well. We're also, as Kendall mentioned, we're distributing essentials. So that's soap, sanitation, supplies, other critical resources that may be hard to come by right now. We actually have one partner who was preparing for a spring season, a soccer season, and they had a whole ball bank of soccer balls that were just ready to go for the season. They pretty quickly realized that those soccer balls were not going to be very useful with, the restrictions and essentially the practices in the season having to be, or at least the in-person portion of it having to be postponed. And so they thought, well, what can we do? Let's try to get these soccer balls out. And so literally they put all the soccer balls in a handful of cars, started driving them around to our mentee sites in our homes. And they also thought, well, if we're distributing the soccer balls, why don't we coordinate with the school district and see if we can start distributing school packets and other, essential supplies to help our kids complete their schoolwork as well. So, there's a lot of really just thinking on their feet and finding new ways to be mentors, even amidst all these new challenges. So I wanted to quickly also just hopefully talk a little bit about some of the challenges we're seeing. I talked about, the access issues that we're finding. Some of the strategies that we've been working on are, creating QR codes for whatever resources we create. So if our participants do have access to a phone, they can link out to other resources. We're also trying to coordinate with school districts to supplement school packets to see if our after-school mentor program materials can be included with those packets as well. Those solutions are not perfect. We're still having access issues, like I mentioned, with the social media channels. And so really, I'm hoping to have a conversation, as Trisha mentioned, about, solutions that some of you might have seen for access and finding ways around that. And really with the hope and goal of, reaching the kids who are most difficult to access. That's really what we're trying to do. Virtual child safety, that's kind of a new reality that we're having to think about. We felt really strong about our mentor screening practices going into the spring season, and now we're having to think about these new virtual considerations. And so the U.S. Center for Safe Sport has actually been an incredible resource during this time. I would encourage anyone thinking about virtual child safety to go check out their website because it's really relevant for non-sports youth programming as well, I would say. I put their program flexibility. To me, that's a lot of kind of planning in the unknown. So we're really testing how flexible our 12-week evidence-based Soccer for Success curriculum can be. We have a big training component with our program, so we're trying to find solutions. Trainings, can we do virtual trainings? So really, we're testing kind of the flexibility limits of our program, which creates a lot of challenges for sure. And then lastly, wanted to talk quickly about the economy. We're working with a lot of partners who are experiencing layoffs, furloughs, fundraising gaps. We're hearing from partners who are saying, hey, every year we have an annual golf fundraiser that supports us throughout the year, but we've had to cancel that. So what does that mean? What other solutions can we help them think about? So we're trying to find kind of local grant opportunities, sharing those with partners, and really trying to, find as many opportunities as possible. And I just want to say, lastly, Kendall, when she was speaking, really had me thinking about kind of the role of a mentor, and specifically during this time of uncertainty. And I think, sometimes people ask me what I personally think about what is the most important characteristic of a mentor. And I think for our program, I always say dependability. So our program runs 3 times a week. And so for me, the most important characteristic of a mentor is showing up on time, staying for the whole practice, for each practice throughout the season, right? Showing that you're there, that you care about them, and that you're here for them. And there's so many new uncertainties that have been created by this new period. And so we're really trying to work hard to, overcome those uncertainties, because as many of you know, I don't have to tell you all, but our mentees are already dealing with so much uncertainty. And so we're trying to create as much dependable mentorship opportunities as possible. So I just want to say thanks again. I'm really excited to continue this conversation with you all and hear from you all and learn from you all. And just want to say a thank you to Mentor again, and thank you to Kendall and Trisha, and appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Aaron. We had 1 or 2 questions here for you. The U.S. Center, you mentioned U.S. Center for Safe Sport. Folks just wanted to hear that name one more time.
Yeah, exactly. It's the U.S. Center for Safe Sport. And it's they're kind of the governing body of the Safe Sport Act, which is supposed to govern kind of child safety and youth sporting opportunities. And so they've been thinking really critically about what is the most important child safety considerations to make, during this virtual setting. So I would certainly recommend checking out the website, U.S. Center for Safe Sport, and it's safesport.org is the website. That's right.
And are your twice a month check-ins a requirement?
So those are not necessarily a requirement. It's such a good question, the question of requirements right now. As many of you probably experience in your own programs, we have certain requirements that we ask our partners to fulfill. And some of that just doesn't feel right now, because, so many of them are dealing with real life considerations. Maybe they have kids at home, maybe they have been laid off, maybe there's other things that they're experiencing. And so adding requirements and tasks for them to do when they're experiencing that is, not something we necessarily want to do. But what we do want to do is create, opportunities and resources for folks who would benefit from them if that's what they're looking for, right? So if we're really trying to work with those parents and those mentees who are saying, I'm stuck at home, I would love to do something, I just don't know, I can't find what to do. And so we're trying to create something to hopefully fill that gap, but also be respectful that, folks are just dealing with so much right now. So not a requirement, hopefully just the support.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Right. So what we'll do now is we'll have all of our panelists come on screen, and we'll open it up to the audience for additional questions, thoughts, and then if our panelists have additional points they want to make to just add to the conversation as well, we can do that. One of the questions that we did get that maybe one of us can answer is, there's thank you, Amy, for this question. There's a nonprofit in New York City that is considering doing a cash assistance grant program to help meet the needs of the communities. Have any of you considered that? And if you have done it, how has that worked for you?
Well, I can answer from the Charlottesville perspective. I hope I'm answering the question here. I mean, I don't think would have the resources to be able to provide cash assistance to our program participants. However, there is a foundation here in our community, the Charlottesville Area Community Foundation, which did almost immediately following the stay-at-home orders and the obvious need that was coming, established a fund here, and several of our families have been able to get assistance from this fund. And so we wouldn't be able to, I don't think, provide that kind of assistance, but we want to look for other that were. And so again, as part of being that hub, we've been able to say to our families, here's an organization that can provide cash assistance. So more making the connection than us actually being the ones providing it.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, if I can, I totally agree with what Trisha's saying. So we're really hopefully acting as a hub for our partners, creating access to opportunities that they might not have been aware of, that we might have come across. But also, as Sydney mentioned in the introduction, we're lucky enough to work with 17 OJJDP partner sites. And so we're really working very closely with them to try to get cash reimbursements from that grant, even when in-person programming might be altered or adapted in some way. And so we're trying to continue to help them and working really closely with them to continue pulling reimbursements from those grants, but then really just trying to think creatively about everything we can do in terms of providing resources. One of the webinars that I mentioned that we put on was actually about the Paycheck Protection Program. And so, we're no experts, but we tried to spend a bit of time and talk a bit about the opportunity and hopefully alert even just one partner to the fact that there was this PPP opportunity out there. So really, we're just trying to throw all hands on deck and create as much awareness as possible for our partners, because as I mentioned earlier, they are dealing, and Kendall mentioned in her presentation, they're dealing so much with real life considerations that they might not have time to see those opportunities. So we're hoping that's where we can kind of step in and support them.
That's great. That's great. I'm looking into the chat here for otherwise. We do have a thank you, Gerard. I hope I pronounced that correctly, who mentioned that we didn't do cash, but we did do a gift card to most in need families, use donor designated funds for families. So there are folks who are using a wide variety of strategies there as well. Another question we have is, one of the programs is sharing that, some of their mentors, for variety of reasons, may not have access to computers or video meetings. And so you have mentors who may not have that technology, especially when they're used to doing site-based mentoring, like in schools, etc. Do you have any ideas or recommendations for how mentors like that can reach out to children? I know, Kendall, earlier you mentioned a letter writing program that your program facilitated, something that they could share with teachers and find other ways to collaborate. One thing I'll also highlight is on our website, we also have a e-mentoring tip guide. So for everyday mentors, we have some guidance around how messaging via email, social media, text can also be leveraged to connect with young people. So we hope folks check that out. But maybe Kendall, you want to talk a little bit about that letter writing program, and then Aaron and Trish, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, of course. So like I said, our letter writing program is mostly for our younger students, but that doesn't mean it necessarily has to be restricted to younger students at all. It's really just because the younger students weren't the ones with the technology. But yeah, pretty much how that goes is it's really kind of maintained and managed by the mentoring coordinator, the elementary school mentoring coordinator. And how that works is the mentor will write, whatever they want, write a little letter, ask how you're doing, maybe give some updates on themselves, tell a story, whatever, maybe something to get the mentee's mind off of whatever might be going on. And from there, they drop that letter off at the respective elementary school that that student goes to. And from there, the coordinator is able to, of course, read the letter, make sure that everything is good, everything is set to go. And since, that mentoring coordinator has that information on the student, then they're able to mail it to the student. And I think it works vice versa. The mentee can drop off a letter to their school as well to get it sent back to their mentor. And this helps kind of facilitate those relationships that may not be at the stage where, you feel comfortable sharing your address. And that's a very important part too as well. We want to make sure that all of our mentees and mentors are safe and are comfortable, especially in a time where you're already feeling unsafe and you're already feeling uncomfortable. So that's pretty much how we do it. So I hope maybe that can help you. Hopefully, maybe.
Thank you. Any other thoughts with that one?
Yeah, I was going to say there's certainly still the old school telephone situation where, I think I mentioned in my and what I shared that I've had a lot of success with people just picking up the phone. I think it comes from a need for connection and kind of creating some sense of normalcy. But to Kendall's point around safety, I think I saw in the chat pop up a while back that I didn't get a chance to answer was around our code of conduct for online and virtual connections. Aaron pointed to this and what he shared around, we on the front end put some structure in place to screen and background check and, make sure that our mentors are, as safe an individual as we can possibly invite into the lives of the young people that we're, privileged to work with. And so, we try to put as much safety and safeguards in place. And again, it comes back to the buy-in of families and what their comfort level is. Kendall mentioned some folks may or may not be comfortable sharing their phone number or their addresses. And so we just respect that and whatever the level of wanting to engage may be. And I think it's just about, being you can be. And I love that people are writing letters these days and picking up the phone. And so it doesn't all have to necessarily hinge on someone having a computer and internet access.
Sure.
Yeah, and I can just add that I think the experience some of our partners are telling us about is that, staying as close as possible to the school districts and to those essential services, because, maybe our mentees can't go to practice, right, because of public health restrictions and regulations. But, they're probably either them or their families are going to collect school supplies. They're going to collect food supplies or other essentials. And so the more we can stay connected with those essential services, I think the more access we will be able to have. But at the same time, I think this is the most important question that we have faced so far. And I would say we don't have an answer yet. And my hope is that, as we get closer to the fall, we will have an answer to that. But there are real issues with, internet, with access to computers, especially in some, underserved communities. And so we're really trying to work through those. Our program is a team match, right? So we don't do the individual match. So we have kind of a 7-to-1 ratio. So we have one coach mentor for every 7 participants. So we've really been trying to encourage some kind of group, some team chats, so that they can send some challenges, send some things that they're working on. As a best practice, we're recommending to invite or requiring to invite the parents as well to those chats so that they have access to see what is being discussed and make sure everything is incredibly transparent. But, that's worked sometimes, but other times it hasn't worked, right? Because for those kids who don't have a phone or don't have their own phone, they're not going to be able to participate in that. And so it's really been, trying everything to stay connected to those essential services, but also understanding that we're not reaching everyone. And so what can we do to improve that? And that's really our biggest focus right now.
And we'll definitely, we have some comments in here about sharing resources. We'll definitely share the e-mentoring tip. We have a question about possibly sharing an example of the code of conduct form. And so, yeah, we can share that as well after this call. Shout out to all the speakers and to Kendall, who's real life MVP in here. And feel free, everyone, too, if you have strategies as well, to add them in here as well. We'd love to be able to share the strategies you have with everyone on this call as well. One question that we have here for all presenters is, are you doing any new matches? And if so, what does that look like, and what are the biggest challenges you face? I know that, obviously with our elements of effective practice, the screening process is such a huge aspect of the role, and figuring out how to onboard new mentors is a unique challenge right now, especially as it relates to getting background checks, access to paperwork, doing FBI fingerprinting, things of that nature can be challenging right now. And curious what you all have experienced with that, if you are still trying to look for new mentors for your programs.
Well, we are not currently onboarding any new mentors. We actually just had a staff meeting today to talk about onboarding new members, new youth into our program. But we are fortunate that we have a pretty decent number of mentors currently engaged in our program that have been previously screened and background checks conducted, and so we could potentially be doing some new matches, but as of right now, the existing mentors that we already have relationships with. As we see what happens with COVID-19 and whether or not stay-at-home orders remain in place, and we'll look to the future and adapt as we need to. And if we have a need to start bringing on new mentors, we'll of course that time to see what else we could do. But currently not onboarding new members, but mentors rather, but potentially bringing on some new youth in the coming weeks.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Kendall, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just kind of wanted to chime in a little bit and talk about, so I don't think my program is necessarily screening new mentors right now with everything going on. Of course, since we are a school-based program, we have seniors who graduated and who have mentors, and so that opens up a couple of spots if mentors kind of want to continue. But there's also something I wanted to address. There was like another question talking about mental health and how those mental health resources that we're currently doing to support these children. So even though we're not assigning new mentors to children, we do still have those resources open. So for example, we have 2 school-based mental health counselors, and they're still working diligently, and they're even taking new referrals currently, and they will be working with students throughout the summer. So even though we recognize that maybe a student might need a mentor and we can't maybe match them right away due to everything that's going on, like Debney said, there's so many things that need to be done, like background checks and extensive research before we really match 2 people. We do have those resources where students can reach out and actually get kind of that mental health advice from professionals who work at the school and who are trusted. So I just kind of wanted to address that as well, that is a resource that might be something that people want to look at.
Yeah, and I can just add, it makes me think of one story. So for, our kind of Soccer for Success timeline, the spring season really kicks off right when COVID-19 kicked off, right? And so there was a lot of really unusual situations. And one story that sticks out in my head was from Washington State, where we had our coach mentors essentially welcoming their mentees into a classroom to distribute their supplies after having essentially postponed the season. And so the kids came to collect the supplies and met their coach mentor. And one of the kids came up and said, "Hey, are you Coach Wilson? I think you were supposed to be my coach mentor, right?" And she said, "Yep, I was supposed to be it. Like, hopefully we'll be able to have a season soon." And according to her, the mentee's body just kind of collapsed to the floor, right? He was so disappointed that he wasn't going to be able to do this season. And so, it was a really kind of a tough time, right? As the spring season was about to kick off. With that being said, I think we are accepting new matches. And so because of the way our timeline is set up, most of our background checks are conducted before the fall season. And they're good for a full year, and so they're covered for that spring season as well. So as I kind of mentioned earlier, we're accepting new matches, if they're willing to accept us, right? And so they're dealing with a lot of other challenges, but if they are looking for resources or engagement, we are trying to engage them as much as possible.
Yeah. And as you're navigating, whether it's related to things like food, mental health, are you getting support from local or state government in supporting your programs and potential resources there? I'm curious if either you, Erin, Trisha, or Kendall have received that kind of support and what has been most helpful.
Yeah, we've had some partners working to get, SNAP-Ed benefits. They've been working with their, local SNAP-Ed dollars in their state to try to access food supplies and other opportunities. Again, I would say school districts have been huge. So school districts have been granted kind of, food access and food distribution privileges during this period that they might not have otherwise been, able to do. And so I think they have to, through kind of some of the places I've learned that they have funds and they have support through, the state and through the county school districts through June 30th, but then they're concerned about what happens after July 1. And so, I would say it's a lot of kind of coordination with, SNAP-Ed, with school districts, organizations like Share Our Strength, who was another presenter on one of our webinars, who run the No Kids Hungry campaign, are doing a huge amount of work in the area. So, really learning from a lot of folks, because this is, like most people, not something we're used to dealing with. And so it's incredibly kind of encouraging to see how many people are kind of stepping up, even at the state, the county level, to make sure that our mentees, their participants, their communities have access to food amidst everything that's going on.
Yeah, I think given the unfortunate economic impacts of the coronavirus, we don't currently, as far as I'm aware, receive any funding from our state. I mentioned earlier that we do receive funding through an OJJDP grant, federal funding. Outside of that, we do have, I think, a great relationship with our local county and city government, and they do support us through some grant funding that we apply for annually. But as city, local governments, state governments across the US, they are unfortunately having to reassess their funding priorities at this time. And of course, it's our concern that mentoring programs might not be as financially supported as they have been up to this point, because there's more, not more, but there are some very essential services that they might need to fund before funding can come to programs like ours. And so it's just sort of a wait and see as our local government figures out what they have left in the budget and what they can share. But if anyone has any tips on connecting to more funding, we'd love to hear it as well.
We have a couple of great comments in the chat box here. Regarding food security, schools tend to have food stocked up, but there are regulations on what they're allowed to do with unused food. It might be, I wonder if they are allowed to distribute the food to students and employees. Maybe that's a resource. There are a couple of programs who are onboarding mentors. Keisha, thank you for sharing. They've had mentors in the process of being matched with when SIP went into effect, and they were able to introduce mentors virtually via Zoom after all parties agreed to virtual mentoring. There's a school-based program who are training new mentors through Zoom meetings to set them up for August, September. So that way there's the opportunity to still complete a full background check and do a school orientation and create an opportunity to get them connected while they have a little bit more time now. So at least doing some early connection points and then complete the background check before orientation in the fall. So sort of looking ahead. So thank you to Legacy Youth Mentoring for sharing that. All right, so we have another comment here around ideas for 2021. There's really two sets of questions that are popping up. One is looking forward to this upcoming year, starting in the fall. What does it look like for contingency planning if things open up or don't open up, integrating virtual with in-person or not, making some of those decisions. And then a lot of what we're seeing in families and homes, some young people are also navigating difficult situations at home where maybe one of their outlets was being able to go to school or go to a program, but they're navigating all kinds of situations at home, whether it's violence related or other kinds of issues. What are ways that mentors and programs can provide some form of support during this time, and have you all sort of navigated any of that and been able to connect young people to other resources to support them as they're navigating that? So those two trends, like what are you thinking about as you look out to the new year, and then how do we also continue to support young people who are navigating all kinds of difficult challenges at home? Maybe we'll toss it to Tricia first.
Yeah, again, this was something that came up in we have a standing 10 a.m. staff meeting every morning, and it's definitely a pleasure to see the faces of my colleagues. But one thing we talked about was this not knowing where we're going to be. We pretty much are planning for not being able to have in-person meetings through the summer, and we're hopeful that we can resume in the fall. So we're trying to make our programming as flexible as possible so that it's something that could translate in a virtual setting, but then we can start to implement in-person meetings again as it becomes safe to do so. So I guess flexibility really is the name of the game, and just kind of managing your expectations to understand that we just don't know what the future is going to hold. So do our best to try to plan for everything. I know that sounds like a ridiculous task for us just to plan for everything, but yeah, we're working towards everything being virtual through the summer, and just trying to be creative with what that could look like.
Yeah.
And then just the second part of that is once we are able to resume in person meetings, really looking to the health and safety experts and to what advice they are giving as far as what are the protocols that we need to put in place in our space when we can start to come together again? Does it, we've got the hand washing station, everyone washes hands first, everyone's required to wear masks, everyone's required to, we don't have all those answers just yet, but it's certainly something that's on our radar, and that we're going to figure that out as we go. But for now, we're planning everything to be virtual.
Yeah, and we definitely want to encourage everyone to, follow CDC and, local, state, federal guidelines on those specific protocols. Obviously, a lot of our expertise is on the social emotional learning, the relationships, the programming, but we'll definitely need to follow the guidelines as prescribed to us to support with that process. Did you want to share there too, Aaron?
Yeah, thanks, Sunny. So our program really, we're based in Washington, D.C., but we're working in, I think last year, almost 40 states across the country. So right now we're currently kind of undergoing a listening tour and really talking to some trusted community partners across the country in each community to learn really what specifically they think is possible in the upcoming year, right? Because we can sit here in DC and feel confident we know what's going to happen in the next year, but really they're the ones who are facing the kind of local barriers, the local public health restrictions. So we're really trying to learn as much as possible from them, but at the same time, like Trisha was saying, at a certain point you have to make a decision about the upcoming year. And so we are currently still planning, for everything to be virtual through the summer. We're assuming, at least in some places, a lot of the fall is going to be virtual as well. And so, like Trisha said, we're trying to work on program modifications that are going to work both in a virtual and a non-virtual setting, right? So if they're allowed to have in-person Soccer for Success practices, all the better. Then everything, here's the normal curriculum. If they can't, do we need to make certain, COVID modifications to our training, to our curriculum? What type of considerations do we have to make to increase access to the virtual resources? So these are all things we're thinking through with a kind of hopeful timeline of working through all of these answers, by the end of June, hopefully. But as we've all said, I think things are evolving, things are fluid. We're really kind of planning into the unknown, and so we're doing our best, but really leaning on our community partners as much as possible.
Well, thank you all so much. We need to start the process of transitioning to the closeout portion. I feel like this went by really, really fast. So I thought I would maybe just go around the block, and if you have a closing thought that you would like to share specifically around, the concept of, how do we continue to support mentees as they're navigating all kinds of trauma, stress, anxiety, violence, of the other kinds of issues that they may be navigating. What is some of your, and again, it's not about us having all the answers, and I'll sort of share some of the resources that we're thinking about and sharing at Mentor, but I'm curious if you want to sort of close out on that note of how do we continue to preserve health as best as we can through the work that we do. And we'll go Trisha, Aaron, and then Kendall.
But I was going to jump in fast because I noticed in the chat there was a question around, if you have a young person that is experiencing some trauma and they've shared that with their mentor, how do you support the mentor? How do you support that young person? And it's really, I think, us coming together as a staff to make sure that we've identified the appropriate resources. I mean, we, try to make it very clear that I'm certainly not a mental health counselor or an expert in that area, but knowing what resources are in our community and really, really stressing to our mentors. And I saw lots of questions around code of conduct. And one of the things that we stress in the code of conduct is to just be very, very diligent and reporting back to our staff anything that might be slightly concerning so that we can help navigate those situations. And one other comment that I think is important in terms of support and care for each other, for our members, our youth and ourselves, our staff. I saw a comment around some hesitation around being engaging in virtual meetings, and it's been really a refreshing kind of thing. I know so much of what we do as mentoring programs is we rely so much on those relationships that we get to build, and so it's been so lovely to see the faces of the kids that we get to work with and our mentors, and it's been for me something certainly that's helped us get through this time of isolation. And so I definitely encourage you to consider what that could look like for your program, and I'm happy to talk to anyone directly if anyone wants to reach out about our way that we've navigated this so far, if you want to continue the conversation. But yeah, I think caring for ourselves, caring for our mentors, and then ultimately caring for our youth when we're doing it together. So
thank you so much, Trisha.
Yeah, I just want to, thanks, Jenny. I just want to start by, saying like Trisha, if anyone, thinks they might benefit from our Soccer for Success at Home materials. You can find them at the U.S. Soccer Foundation website. They're, free for everyone to use and benefit from if they see somewhere where they can benefit. I think in terms of, something I've been thinking about a lot recently is, I have a young son at home, and you're thinking about all these challenges. You're hearing about the economic situation. You're hearing some organizations are shutting down. And so I think it's really easy right now to feel overwhelmed and kind of feel down, right? And so I was in a place maybe a few weeks ago where I was letting that kind of creep in a bit. And then I started thinking about, some of our mentees and where they are and what they need. And really just trying to almost overcome my own anxieties, right? And so, if I'm having these anxieties, what anxieties are our mentees having? And if they're having them, they need support. And so I want to be there to support them. And so I'm really trying to push myself to, even if I'm feeling nervous or overwhelmed by the situation, really just trying to hopefully step up. And I think as an organization, a lot of my colleagues and our partners are doing the same, almost putting on a happy face so that, we can hopefully find the light together and overcome the situation. But really just, a lot of resiliency, a lot of persistence, and just kind of staying focused on the mission to support our mentees.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Kendall?
Yeah, I completely agree with Aaron and Trisha. One of the main things that, we as an organization are really trying to harp on is communication. Communication is so essential in times like this, especially when you can't have that in-person thing all the time. Literally, whatever way you can, just try and let your mentee know that you're there for them. Sometimes that's all they really need, especially when they may be going through something just not that great at home. And another thing with keeping up with what they may be dealing with at home, maybe certain situations. I just want to give a quick shout out to my mentoring coordinator at the high school, Ms. Kate Andriaco. I know she was on this call, but she does a really amazing job at keeping track of the mentees as well, always making sure to email them and always making sure to make sure they're okay, and kind of building up that relationship where, the students can feel okay with sharing what they may be going through, what resources they may need. So that's another thing I think is really important, is just building that relationship on all levels of the program, to just let the kids know that there are adults out there who care about them. There's adults out there who are thinking about them. And that's just really essential. As a student myself, it's been super, super important to me that my mentor has been, very diligent in keeping contact with me, and, my mentor and coordinator always making sure that I'm okay. And as a mentor, mentors, again, that you guys are taking care of yourselves as well, and you guys are staying safe and informed, so you can be you can inform your mentee. It's a cycle. But again, I just want to thank everybody on this call, and like I said, communication is key. So
Yes. Thank you all so much, Aaron, Trisha, Kendall, for being a part of this conversation and sharing your experiences, and for everyone in the chat box for all your great questions and comments. We'll certainly look through it and share out in our follow-up email some of the different resources. I know we had the request about a template for codes of conduct, so we'll make sure to get some of those kinds of things out to you all. And we'll talk through now a couple of other next steps and resources we want to share with everybody. And so, as we've been sharing, Mentor has worked to develop the virtual mentoring portals to continue to encourage connection at this time. Like Kendall said, even though we don't get to have the in-person time that we want, connection of some kind is really important. It still provides some structure, some routine, and can support regulation. And so, through the virtual mentoring portals, we've collaborated with I Could Be, one of the leading experts on virtual mentoring in the US since 2000, and to collaborate on creating a free tool for youth 13 and older And this tool provides an unstructured opportunity for interactions through a monitored email system or a structured curriculum, research-backed curriculum. And it provides mentoring programs with virtual mentoring for existing mentees and mentors. And it's constructed with respect to best practices, particularly around safety and data privacy. And then our virtual mentoring portal for youth 12 and under is also accessible through our partnership with Cricut Together. Cricut Together provides convenient, rewarding, and impactful approach to e-mentoring, connecting mentors and students virtually across the US to help to overcome geographic and socioeconomic barriers. And interest in programs can use their existing platform to support children with their evidence-based curriculum. And program staff will also have access to an administrative portal that will enable them to manage the program and review all mentee and mentor participation and communication on the virtual mentoring portal. And so please submit an interest form if you are interested, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. You could also find FAQs and informational webinars on our website. And on the next slide here, the Mentor website again is our one-stop place for all the different resources that we have. We're working to add more and more. We have a couple of links on there that tackle the topic of mental health as well, and health, holistic health too. So please check out our website here for the e-mentoring tips that I mentioned earlier is at this link here. The e-mentoring guide, in the whole guide that we have that follows the elements of effective practice is on here. For access to the virtual mentoring portals, you can learn about our advocacy and policy response and a curated list of a wide variety of resources that we've put together to support at this time. And so if you want to reach out to Trisha, Aaron, Kendall, feel free to reach out to us directly. On this next slide, you can email us at info@mentoring.org. And I also want to encourage everyone to apply for no-cost help from the NMRC. Our affiliate network, we work all across the country. We have 24 affiliates who do incredible work to serve their states. But what's great about the National Mentoring Resource Center is that we can provide no-cost technical assistance for programs anywhere in the US. So even if you don't have an affiliate in your state, please still reach out to us for technical assistance, and we will participate and collaborate with you for coming up with strategies around virtual trainings. We had a couple questions here around how do we do virtual trainings? How do we adopt safety guidelines? How do we change our policies and practices if we want to go into a hybrid model? All of these things are what we're in dialogue about. And so our whole network is here and available to support you with those questions. So please apply for no-cost help through the NMRC. Follow us at Mentor National. We have Mentor Minutes and other resources that we'll be posting up through our social media. And then, continue to join us in future national quarterly calls and some of our other webinars that we'll continue to put together as we learn more from the field and from the survey results that you all provided us. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for reaching out. If you have any question, just let us know. And if you have additional questions for the panelists, we can get the answers from them and send that your way. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for taking the time today and being a part of this conversation. So shout out to you, Trisha, Aaron, for all the work that you do, and Kendall for being such a great role model and sharing your leadership as well, and showing that young people are partners in this. They're not just the recipients of service. They are observing what their families are going through, what their communities are going through, and coming up with solutions to these as well. And so Kendall, thank you for sharing what you and your peers are doing to be part of the response and to collaborate with programs as well. So thank you everybody for the time.